Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 309. Hope you guys have had a great week. Thank you for joining me today. I have a great podcast for you. Still talking about the lack of trust in the mainstream media, and talking about the premise that I laid out 2 podcasts ago, that the mainstream media has an agenda. The media that is owned by a handful of corporations, the media that 90% of Americans get 90% of their media. I don't know if it's 90% of Americans, but they get the people who do trust the mainstream media and consume mainstream media. And when I talk about media, I'm not just talking about the news stations and news channels that are covering politics and world events on a 24-hour cycle. I'm not only talking about those outlets. I'm talking about outlets like ESPN, like Fox Sports. I'm talking like outlets like Paramount Pictures, Pixar Pictures. I'm not only talking about, because the point that I'm making is that all of that is owned by the same corporations. All of that. The Disney Corporation owns ABC News, but they also own ESPN. They also own Pixar. Warner Brothers owns CNN, but they also own Warner Brothers Pictures. They also own HBO. So when I talk about the media, I'm talking about the media broadly, and all of the media outlets, not just news, but we're going to focus a lot on news. But the people who, these corporations are responsible for, 90%, close to 90% of the media that we consume. Now that may have changed in the past few years, because a lot of people are now fleeing mainstream media. They're consuming alternative media. They're consuming podcasts. They're consuming, other alternative media. So those numbers may not be as high as they have traditionally been. And that's what we're talking about. The fact that people are fleeing mainstream media, and it's happening at a alarming rate. So last week, an annual report came out from the Reporters Without Borders, and it's the Press Freedom Index. And the United States fell 2 spots in the Press Freedom Index, and everybody's making a big deal about it. And it's hilarious, because everyone's reporting on this, and they're saying, look, the United States is losing press freedom under Trump. They want to blame Trump for the fact that the United States media lost 2 positions on the Press Freedom Index, that it's all Trump's fault. And this guy, you're going to see, he has to keep correcting these people. These are 2 foreign outlets that I'm going to play here, but this same reporting was going on here in the United States. But the guy who is part of the Reporters Without Borders, he has to keep reminding these people, because they keep trying to blame Trump. He's like, no, all the data that we collected for this index was from last year during the Biden administration. So this information on that is showing the United States lost 2 positions on press freedom, it was all gathered during the Biden administration. But they're trying to make it Trump's fault that people are losing interest in mainstream media, that are losing trust in mainstream media, that it's Trump's fault. I want to start with this clip. Again, this is foreign media, but this same reports were going on here in the United States as well.
The media watchdog Reporters Without Borders says global press freedom has hit a new low, with more and more countries seeing rollbacks. In its annual survey, the group said that for the first time, conditions are ranked poor in half the world's countries. The group released this map showing how countries rank in terms of press freedom. Those shaded in green in Northern Europe did the best, but the number of top performers has decreased since last year. The report says rising instability around the world, growing authoritarianism in certain countries, and above all, economic pressure are taking a huge toll on press freedom. The list of worst-ranked countries grew dramatically from last year, from 36 to 52, most in Asia and the Middle East. China, Russia, Turkey and Iran are among those who did the poorest. The United States is part of the downward trend, slipping 2 points within the problematic category. That's in part due to the Trump administration limiting press access to the White House.
That's in part, listen to how he reports this. That's in part because of Trump limiting access to the White House. Now, Trump has been the most, in the past 100 days, you can say whatever you want about Trump, even as a Democrat. The guy has been open to the press. I mean, seriously? This is how this foreign news agency is reporting this? First of all the data collected that made the United States lose 2 positions on this index came from the Biden administration, but they're blaming Trump and saying that the reason why the United States lost and moved down 2 positions is because of Trump.
Part of the downward trend, slipping 2 points within the problematic category. That's in part due to the Trump administration limiting press access to the White House and the president's lawsuits against media.
He brings the press into the Oval Office all the time. It's crazy.
Companies. DW's Washington bureau chief Ines Pohl has more.
Freedom of the press in the United States is in a problematic situation, according to the latest World Press Freedom Index. What exactly does this mean for journalists? How endangered is freedom of speech in Trump's America?
Freedom of speech.
We met David Maraniss, a Pulitzer Prize-winning author of numerous books, including biographies of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama.
So this guy who they're talking to is a biographer, and he did biographies on Bill Clinton, on Barack Obama. I want you to listen to what this guy says.
Freedom of speech in Trump's America. We met David Maraniss, a Pulitzer Prize-winning author of numerous books, including biographies of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama.
Even though every president,
including biographies of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama.
He's got a picture of Obama back here on his wall. So he not only did a biography of Obama, he's got another picture. This is another picture of Obama right here. You think this guy likes Obama?
Prize-winning author of numerous books, including biographies of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama.
Even though every president has a spin, there's a nuance, an important difference between spin and outright lying, and sort of saying that black is white and white is black, which is what the Trump people do.
Now listen, this is a report about the fact that the United States lost 2 positions on this index, and all of the information gathered came from the Biden administration, but they're making this whole report about Trump, that it's Trump's fault that the United States is moving down 2 positions on this index about press freedom, that it's Trump's fault. This is crazy. That this is how it's done. This is why people don't trust the media. This is very dishonest.
Every day, and do it so often that it's dizzying.
It's Donald Trump's second term. How has his rhetoric changed?
When Trump first took office in 2017, he described the press as enemies of the people. At that point, Marty Barron, who was the editor of the Post, said, "We're not at war, we're at work." Today, it's different. It really is a war in many senses.
Maraniss, a fellow of the Society of American Historians, gave us some historic context.
I mean, the attacks on the press every day, the attacks on truth, the twisting of reality.
The attacks on the press, so you're not allowed to criticize. These people think that the First Amendment means that you're not allowed to criticize the press. What do you mean the attacks on the press? You guys get a lot of stuff wrong, a lot of stuff wrong. And right now, the story that's being highlighted is how you all covered up for Joe Biden and his mental decline as we were leading up into the 2024 election. And that's leading to a lot of people that's contributing to what is leading a lot of people to distrust you people. And the fact that people don't trust you, those are not attacks on you. That's not an attack on you. That only shows the quality of the product that you produce in a free market system where consumers have the free will to consume what they want to consume. I don't have to consume you if your product is trash. I don't want to consume you when you're lying to me and you have this bias.
The attacks on truth, the twisting of reality is so serious and so endangering democracy.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the press in the United States has never been in this situation before.
Every year, Reporters Without Borders publishes its Press Freedom Index ahead of World Press Freedom Day.
So this guy, I forget his name. Anyway, he works for Reporters Without Borders, and he has to correct you. He actually says the truth that all this information came from the Biden administration. That look, this isn't Trump's. None of this information reflects anything in the Trump administration. Why are you guys lying?
We met Clayton Wamers, Executive Director of Reporters Without Borders USA, in his office in Washington.
The United States has been undergoing what you could call a decline in press freedom for several years now. When we started doing the index in 2002, the United States was ranked 17th in the world. It's not as high as I think most Americans would like it to be, since we're very proud of our First Amendment, but still better than where it is today at 57th out of 180 countries, which is shockingly low for the country of the First Amendment.
According to Clayton, the decline is not only because of Donald Trump.
It's not only because of Donald Trump. The decline has nothing to do with Donald Trump, people. All the information came from the Biden administration from last year. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
According to Clayton, the decline is not only because of Donald Trump. The index covers data from 2024, pointing to a worsening media environment even before Trump returned to power.
We're also seeing a really heavy concentration of media ownership.
Listen to what he says. Listen to what he says here. Media cross ownership. That's the big problem. That all this information came from the Biden administration that resulted in the United States losing 2 positions on this index. And the answer that he gives, he says, no, it's not Donald Trump. It's the media cross ownership. It's the fact that so few corporations own all of the media. That's what he's talking about.
We're also seeing a really heavy concentration of media ownership. Which has the eventual effect of restricting how many points of view and voices are out there for people to be able to access.
That's the problem. Media cross ownership. All of this, that Walt Disney owns all of this media, that NBC Universal owns all of these media outlets. Warner Brothers owns all of this. Paramount Global owns all of this. Fox Corporation, and in a few hands, in a few corporations, all of this media is owned. That's why. That's the reason, is what Clayton says. And this came about because of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which was signed under Bill Clinton. Before Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act, media cross ownership was heavily regulated. You weren't allowed to, these few corporations weren't allowed to own all of this media. And they opened it up during the Clinton administration with the 1996 Telecommunications Act. That's the problem. That's what Clayton says here from Reporters Without Borders. The reason that people are losing trust, the reason that the United States is moving 2 positions in a negative direction with press freedom is because of media cross ownership.
Even before Trump returned to power.
We're also seeing a really heavy concentration of media ownership, which has the eventual effect of restricting how many points of view and voices are out there for people to be able to access. Some years ago, more Americans were tuning into journalism to get their information. And so there was a natural constituency of the public to defend journalism, to defend journalists in the face of attacks. With fewer and fewer Americans getting their information, getting their news from journalistic sources, there's fewer people standing up to the president when he attacks this pillar of our democracy.
Yeah, no, we agree with the president. We agree with the president when he attacks you because we have the same contempt for you liars as he has for you. And when Trump attacks you, it speaks to us because we feel the same way about you, because we know that you've been lying to you. I have this other clip. This is another foreign report from France. They're interviewing Clayton again from the Reporters Without Border. He manages the offices here in the United States.
Let's bring in Clayton Wimers. He's the U.S. Executive Director of Reporters Without Borders. Such a pleasure to have you with us on the program today. As we just saw in that report, for the first time in history, the Bain Index for press freedom is at its lowest ever score. Just starting with the United States, help us get a grasp of just how much press freedom has slipped under Donald Trump.
Under Donald Trump.
Sure, and thank you for having me. It is important to remember that the index is a snapshot in time of the previous year.
It's the previous year. He has to talk because she says, tell us how press freedom slipped under Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump's fault. He's like, yeah, all this information came from last year, honey.
Just starting with the United States, help us get a grasp of just how much press freedom has slipped under Donald Trump.
Sure, and thank you for having me. It is important to remember that the index is a snapshot in time of the previous year. All the data we collected
came from
is from 2024.
2024.
And so the decline in the United States is really one that's been going on for the better part of a decade. When we first started doing the index in 2002, the United States ranked 17th in the world. It's now down to 57th out of 180 countries. And that is reflected in the fact that all 5 indicators that we measure have been taking hits year after year, especially the economic indicator due to massive layoffs in the media industry and the closure of newsrooms all across the country, creating a news desert problem.
Because people aren't consuming it, that these places are closing down, creating a news desert where the only people who can survive are these huge corporations that buy up all of the anything that is on the verge of closing down. If they have any viability, then they'll be gobbled up by one of these corporations because they can own as much as they want. And that's what Paramount Global's attempting to do right now. They're attempting to merge with Skydance, which and the Redstone family, Sumner Redstone. That's what he did back in the 1990s when he merged CBS and Viacom and just started. I mean, this guy benefited so much from and his family from Bill Clinton's 1996 Telecommunications Act. So now his daughter runs it, and she's trying to merge with Skydance, which owns CBS. We're going to get into that here in a moment. But this media cross ownership is the huge problem. That's the problem. And he's saying here that one of the major problems that we've seen over the last 10 years is these news deserts where news outlets are either failing or they're being gobbled up by the huge corporations.
Industry and the closure of newsrooms all across the country, creating a news desert problem. But in recent years, it's really become a political and cultural problem with the massive decline in trust between the public and the media and outright attacks by politicians, in particular.
So he says that the issue is that the people don't trust the media anymore. That's the root of the issue. That's why you're having news deserts. That's why you're having news outlets shutting down and because they don't have the viewership, they don't have the people to support them because nobody trusts. The trust is the main issue, is that nobody trusts you. And then so he's blaming the attacks by politicians. I guess that's where he's insinuating Donald Trump, but not only Donald Trump, saying that Donald Trump attacking the media is what's leading to the distrust in the media is because no, it's not because Donald Trump attacks the media. You guys have lost our trust because you're blatantly lying to us, blatantly gaslighting us. I mean, the greatest example right now is Joe Biden and how you lied to us and told us that he was sharp and the best he's ever been. You lied to us about hydroxychloroquine and told us that if we took hydroxychloroquine during COVID, that it was going to kill us when they take it every day in Africa for malaria. I mean, you lied to us about Hunter Biden's laptop. You lied to us about ivermectin told us it was horse dewormer. You lied to us about everything. That's why nobody trusts you people. And that's the problem. That's the root problem, that nobody trusts the mainstream media, and they want to blame Trump. That the reason that nobody trusts the media is because Trump attacks the media.
Political and cultural problem with the massive decline in trust between the public and the media, and outright attacks by politicians, in particular President Donald Trump. I should add, though, that everything that's happened in President Trump's second administration for the past 100 or so days has not been counted in the index data. So the decline is continuing before our very eyes. And
yeah. So it was all the data came from the Biden administration and 2004, but they all said that it's Trump's fault. They want to blame Trump and say it's getting worse under Trump because Trump attacks the media. He's to blame. No, the media, they're all propagandists, and this is what you get with media cross ownership. All of the media controlled by very few corporations, then it's easy for them to send talking points out and to shape a overall narrative that they want to. Doesn't matter which corporation it is. They all have the same narrative. And this clip went viral last week, showing how all of these different outlets that are owned by different corporations, that they all have the same narrative and are using the same word, escalation, that they want to get that out there. You have NBC, you have CNN, you even have PBS NewsHour. PBS got the talking points. And this is before Donald Trump cut their funding. How does PBS get the talking points? But they're not even part of this, this corporate apparatus. And they got the talking points. Take a listen.
We begin tonight with the escalation in the president's crackdown on illegal immigration.
Today's dramatic escalation in the Trump administration's conflict
CNN.
with judges.
The Trump administration
ABC.
signaling a major escalation in its deportation efforts.
Today, an
PBS.
escalation in the Trump administration's battle with the judiciary.
Tensions between local
NBC.
and federal authorities over President Trump's immigration crackdown escalated today.
We begin this hour with a major
MSNBC.
escalation of the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration.
We begin with what appears to be
ABC.
a major escalation in the Trump administration's deportation efforts.
And what is a major escalation in
CNN.
the battle here in D.C. over immigration and deportation.
This feels like an insane and reckless escalation from the Trump
So
administration.
if you were a professor in college, and an English professor, and you had a classroom of 30 people, and you had 9, and they had to write a term paper, and you had 9 term papers that referred to an escalation. What would you think? You think, well, somebody's plagiarizing something here. They're all using the same word. I mean, how could that happen? That they just want to get the word escalation out. But this is an example of why nobody trusts you, because you people are propagandists. So Trump, informed, he attacks mainstream media today. I think this post came out on his Truth Social account this morning, and he's attacking MSNBC. And he says MSNBC is MSNBC, the worst there is on television. Misrepresentation is so far knowingly off in their statements about me and tariffs that it should be considered a major campaign violation. So this is what he's saying. There is nothing less than they are nothing less than an arm of the Democratic National Committee. This is the premise that I've been talking about over the last 2 podcasts, that the mainstream media has an agenda. Their agenda is the agenda of the Democratic Party. There's no daylight between the agenda. So he's calling out MSNBC and saying that MSNBC, they are nothing less than an arm of the DNC. That MSNBC is an arm of the DNC. And he calls it a campaign violation because it should be, because what these media organizations are doing in shaping the narrative to support the agenda of the Democratic Party, especially during elections, is in-kind contributions in kind. Absolutely. So that's what he's referring to when he says major campaign violation, that it's in-kind contribution. They're nothing less than an arm of the Democrat National Committee, and their untruths are incredible, real losers. Their ratings are down the tubes. True that that pressure on them doesn't give them the right to lie and cheat. No, that's the reason that their ratings are down is because they lie and cheat, Mr. President. It's because they lie and cheat. So the NBC, and he's wrong to put NBC here. I wish he wouldn't have said NBC. I wish he would have just said the media, because the media is an arm of the DNC. All of the media, not just NBC, all these guys, ABC, CNN, PBS, CBS, they're all an arm of the DNC, Mr. President. So the report that he's referencing here about the tariffs is this woman, this propagandist, and this report that she did, I guess this was last night. And Stephanie Rule came from the banking establishment. She comes from Wall Street. All of her sources are Wall Street. The narrative that she wants to project is Wall Street. And Donald Trump says that in imposing these tariffs and engaging in this trade war is he wants to work for Main Street. And if you look at what's happened over the last 20 years since China was invited into the WTO and given permanent trade status under Bill Clinton, if you look at what's happened over the last 25 years, you see not only the increasing in debt, you've seen the wealth transfer and the income inequality. You've seen that the rich have gotten richer and the poor have gotten poorer, and the hollowing out of the middle class ever since these guys gave China permanent trade status and passed NAFTA. So Wall Street has benefited from that. And she comes from Wall Street. She comes from banking. So that's her perspective. I'm not going to play all of this, but I just want you to give you a flavor of what Trump is reacting to when he puts this message out, attacking the mainstream media. Take a listen.
Donald Trump is backed into a corner. His grand plans of tariffs aren't working, right? You're seeing day in and day
I want you to notice here why this propaganda is talking, that they got the Dow Jones down here in the corner. It's back over 41,000, even though Jerome Powell is acting completely political and won't give a small rate cut. This guy is acting completely political. I don't even have time to get into what's going on with the Federal Reserve. But the stock market's doing great. The S&P's made up all of the losses. The stock market is on its way back up to 42,000. The Dow Jones is back up. So while she's talking and saying it's not working, we have the tariffs on and 10% on everyone else, but she's just presenting, and she's doing this on a nightly basis, just presenting FUD, because she comes from banking. Her narrative is Wall Street's narrative. That's the only thing she cares about.
Is backed into a corner. His grand plans of tariffs aren't working, right? You're seeing day in and day out more business leaders, whether it's Warren Buffett or Jamie Dimon.
I don't care about them.
On big global
They've made Warren Buffett and Jamie Dimon have done very well over the last 25 years, lady. Very well.
Aren't working, right? You're seeing day in and day out more business leaders, whether it's Warren Buffett or Jamie Dimon or Ken Griffin, on big global stages saying this is going to crush us economically. And then you've got congressmen, senators from every state saying to this White House, our small businesses are strangling.
So she goes on for 2 minutes here. I don't have time to play the whole thing, but this is the report that Donald Trump is referencing here when he says that MSNBC is a arm of the DNC, which it absolutely is. The narrative that she's presenting here is the narrative that the Democratic Party wants presented, because the Democratic Party is part of the same establishment of elite on Wall Street. The same. The Democratic Party put it all together. So yes, that's the narrative that she's presenting. Stephanie Rule. So Stephanie Rule was this Stephanie Rule, this propagandist, was on a podcast this week, the Soul Boom podcast, and the host of the podcast asked her directly about why people do not trust the media, why the media is losing trust and declining in ratings, and people are just turning them off. Take a listen.
40% of Americans don't trust mainstream media. Why is that? How did we get here?
And I just want to clarify, because 40% don't trust the mainstream. That's 40% says they outright don't trust. Only 31% say that they have a great deal or fair amount of trust, according to the Gallup poll that I presented last week.
Don't trust mainstream media. Why is that? How did we get here?
Listen, we are seeing a huge loss in trust of all of our institutions. It's the media, it's medicine, it's banking.
Now, why would we distrust banking? Yes, it's not all institutions, but yes, but we're talking about the media, lady.
Institutions. It's the media, it's medicine, it's banking. It's a huge problem because when you think about democracy,
she's talking about big pharma. Listen to what she says, medicine. It's the media, it's big pharma, it's banking. Yeah. Why would we lose trust in those?
In trust of all of our institutions. It's the media, it's medicine, it's banking. It's a huge problem because when you think about democracy and all of these pillars, they need to stand tall, they need to stand strong. And sort of losing that trust is not by accident, it's by design. If you remember when President Trump was running the first time.
It's Trump's fault. Listen, so she's getting ready to go in to the reason that people are losing trust in the media is because of Donald Trump. It's Trump's fault that he is doing it intentionally, that he is driving the wedge between the people and the media. Listen to what she says.
Strong. And sort of losing that trust is not by accident, it's by design. If you remember when President Trump was running the first time, Steve Bannon once said, the goal is to blow the whole thing up. And so I think that you've got mistakes made or things starting to slip, while at the same time, there's a concerted effort to destroy the media. Because the media, the news media is, in my opinion, the last line of defense of holding power accountable, right? And you had a bit of a perfect storm, right? President Trump won, and tons of people were shocked or angry or frustrated, and they're tuning out. And at the same time, you have the Elon Musk media machine, because they want you to leave traditional media and they want you to go to X, which is a bastion of misinformation where there is no fact checking. So it's a perfect storm of people saying, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm tuning out, I'm disconnecting. And then you have a force pushing it. But even in the last 2 weeks, what we need to do is just cover what's happening in America, right? We have to cover Democrats trying to figure out what their lane is and how they're going to get back on their feet. And we have to simply cover what this White House is doing. And I think if we do that, right, there's that saying, trust is gained in raindrops and it's lost in buckets. And it's not yes, you're not incorrect that the media has lost trust.
This is where I would push.
So listen, he's getting ready to say, this is where I'd push back. What he's getting ready to do here is called a follow-up question. He says, this is where I push back. So watch what he does when he pushes back, okay? And these propagandists, they know how to do what he's doing, the follow-up question, the pushback. They know how to do that when it's a Republican or someone from the Trump administration in front of them. They do it very well. They just don't do it when it's a Democrat, and they didn't do it with Biden a lot. And didn't push back, let them lie over and over again because they're an arm of the DNC.
It's not yes, you're not incorrect that the media has lost trust.
This is where I would push back. When I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration, and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the environment's, look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem.
Yeah.
And really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thanks.
Yeah, queen of denial. Yeah, he says, you got a lot of passion here. You got a lot of passion for the Trump administration. Why don't you guys have this passion for the Biden administration? Why don't you have this same type of, we got to hold powerful people accountable and all that stuff during the Biden administration is what he's asking. Like you're doing right now during the Trump administration. Why?
Left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem. And really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thank you. Boom.
I would push back on immigration. I can specifically remember when Greg Abbott of Texas and Ron DeSantis of Florida sent those buses of migrants to different cities, different parts of the country, which ended up being politically genius for both of them.
Absolutely genius.
The media regularly talked about the fact that Biden was not doing enough in his first 2.5 years on immigration.
No, you didn't.
Even though in the last year and a half, you're seeing the numbers go down, he just wasn't doing enough. And you saw it in how people voted, right? You had places like the Bronx, you had places like New Jersey, people who said, I'm not happy with immigration in this country. And that's why Democrats are scrambling to recalibrate now. But I do think that was covered. And I interviewed Vice President Harris in September. And I remember asking her, I said, nobody's eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Mm-hmm. However, there are lots of people who live there who aren't happy with
and that interview she did with Kamala Harris, if she thinks that was hard hitting and that she pressed Kamala Harris, this was a extremely softball interview. Nothing like an interview that you would have done with Trump if you would have had him in the middle of that election sitting across from you the way you did Kamala Harris. It's not even remotely the same.
And nobody's eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Mm-hmm. However, there are lots of people who live there who aren't happy with the amount of immigrants who have moved there, legally or not, because now their hospitals are stretched and their schools are stretched. And that's the same thing in tons of communities in the country. What do you say to that? And I remember her answer was, well, we had this immigration bill and Donald Trump blocked it.
Yeah, we had that's the story that they told over and over again. That's the story that they told, that this bill that they had in the first quarter of 2024, that we're going into an election year, we got to do something to address the border. So because we know people are upset with us because we've had open borders and all these migrants coming in for the first 3 years of the Biden administration. So as we enter into the last year of his administration, we're going into an election year. At this time, he's still thinking that he is going to be the nominee. And he finally says, okay, we got to clamp down on the border because we got this election coming up. So they introduced this bill with Opie Cunningham from Oklahoma, gets together with them to create this border bill that was included with $60 billion for Ukraine and another something like $8 to $10 billion for Taiwan were all included in this bill. And they couldn't get Republicans to vote for it. And so they blamed Trump and said that Trump called Republicans and told them don't vote for the bill. So the Biden campaign, and then when it became the Kamala Harris's campaign, that was their narrative every time that they were asked. And these people didn't push back on them. These people did. There's one town hall where Anderson Cooper actually pushes back on that narrative and said that, you didn't get that bill passed and you still have, the border, you're still controlling the border without the bill. They never needed a bill. We're going to get more into this here in a moment, but they never needed a bill. But that's what she is referring to.
Or not, because now their hospitals are stretched and their schools are stretched. And that's the same thing in tons of communities in the country. What do you say to that? And I remember her answer was, well, we had this immigration bill and Donald Trump blocked it. And she's right. So there's nothing to put, she's right. Donald Trump did block the bill. But that doesn't address.
How did Donald Trump block the bill? See, she's a propagandist. Donald Trump didn't block the bill. They say that they have no evidence that Donald Trump forced any one of those Republicans that voted against that bill that had $60 billion for Ukraine in it and only something like, I think it was like $15 billion for our own border. It wasn't just a border bill. And to blame it on Donald Trump, it shows her bias. They have a bias, and that is the point. Chuck Todd says that going back to Joe Biden's cognitive decline and the cover up about that, and these books that are getting ready to come out, with all these unnamed sources talking about how the cover up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline happened. Chuck Todd says it wasn't us. It wasn't in the media covering up for us, or it wasn't journalists, is what he says, because he tries to have another clip from him in a moment where he makes this distinction between the journalists and the pundits. But they're all owned by the same people. The journalists and the pundits are under the same corporate umbrella. They're the same people. So that was his narrative. And then Chris Salissa in the last podcast, he says, well, maybe we had some bias, but it's just because we're all Democrats and we all vote Democrat. So it wasn't a conscious bias. It was just an unconscious bias, is what Chris Salissa says. And then we played the clips in the last podcast of Jake Tapper, attacking Dean Phillips, attacking Laura Trump, covering for Joe Biden, covering for him, attacking the Wall Street Journal reporting that said Joe Biden's cognitive ability was slipping, saying that it was owned by Rupert Murdoch, insinuating. It's a tongue-in-cheek insinuation that you can't trust this report from the Wall Street Journal because it came from a outlet that's owned by Rupert Murdoch. So we played all that from Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper is one of the people who's coming out with one of these books that is exploring the cover-up. This is the title of the book. This is the actual jacket. It's got a picture of Joe Biden with his hands over his eyes. No, you should have a picture of you, Jake Tapper, with your hands over your eyes, bro. But it says Original Sin, and the subtitle, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. So that's the Original Sin. And the Alex Thompson guy, who they gave the award at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, he's got a book coming out. So they're all talking about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And Joe Biden's coming out. Joe Biden was on The View yesterday, and he's doing interviews. We're going to look at this View interview here in a moment, because there's some, this was just fantastic. I was so blown away by some of the questions that were asked and some of the answers that Joe Biden gives, and then they bring his wife out. And we're going to look at some of those here in a moment. But this is Chuck Todd, and he's on News Nation yesterday, and they're talking about this appearance that Joe Biden and Jill Biden had on The View yesterday. Take a listen.
Am I wrong to be shocked the most by the fact that 100 days ago, that man, dare I say that couple, had the nuke codes?
Well, look, I'm not going to go that far. I get where you're coming from on that. It does. There's a lack of self-awareness, I think.
With you too, bro. There's a lack of self-awareness in the media as well.
It does. There's a lack of self-awareness, I think. I think, and it's the hardest thing whenever you're dealing with anybody that gets older, right? The person themselves is in more denial than what people around them see them as. So, and I understand why they're coming out to defend themselves, right? Because
why?
Nobody else is going to defend them, and it's human nature, right? You're going to go out there, you're going to defend yourself. So this is a case where I think one of the misconceptions a lot of us had, and I will stand first in line and admit this, is that I did, look, I've covered politicians long enough to know they're all narcissists to a degree. But I think I thought Joe Biden was a party man, kind of like Bob Dole, if you know what I mean, where they just were, he was Mr. Democrat or Mr. Republican in the terms of Bob Dole, that was his nickname, Mr. Republican. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're a party man, you worry about your party before yourself. And
but shouldn't you? But this is what they say to us. This is what you guys say to us all the time, that we're the Republicans right now. Why aren't the Republicans standing up to Donald Trump? This is what they say. This is their narrative. Shouldn't they put country over party? They should put country over party. That Chuck Todd is saying here that I thought that Joe Biden was a party man, that he would protect the party, but he was only interested in himself and his own wealth. I mean, that's obvious. But shouldn't he care about the country more than himself or the party? And having this guy, which we're going to see some clips from this interview that he did on The View yesterday, having this guy with the nuke codes, like he says, I mean, that put the country in danger. Damn the party, Chuck Todd.
Was a party man, kind of like Bob Dole, if you know what I mean, where they just were, he was Mr. Democrat or Mr. Republican in the terms of Bob Dole, that was his nickname, Mr. Republican. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're a party man, you worry about your party before yourself. And it's pretty clear the Bidens were always much more focused on themselves than the party, whether it was before running for president.
That means they were focused on themselves more than the country, people. That's what Chuck Todd is saying. That's what he's saying.
Much more focused on themselves than the party, whether it was before running for president, while running for president, and certainly now. I also understand the personal, they feel personally attacked, right? These books, in many ways,
this isn't helping
no, I agree. It's not going to help them, but it's the now they tell us syndrome. And so now you have all these former staffers who themselves feel guilty for not speaking out sooner. And in some ways, they're probably better sources today for these authors than I could, trust me, as a reporter covering that White House, I know this, than they were before Election Day. It's sort of like almost now it's safe to trash the Bidens, and you want to say, okay, but where were you a year ago?
You think about
where were you guys a year ago? Where were you guys a year ago? So let me just explain what Chuck Todd is saying, because they're talking about this appearance on The View that Joe Biden made yesterday, and they're asking the question, why the hell are they coming out and doing an interview like this? And Chuck Todd is saying that they coming out because they feel attacked. They know these books, like Jake Tapper's book, is coming out next week. Alex Thompson's book's coming out next week. So they feel that they understand that the S is about to hit the fan. So they're coming out to defend themselves. That's the reason that they're coming out, and that's what Chuck Todd is referring to here. And now they're going to get into the media. That you guys missed it too, Chuck Todd.
For these authors, then I could, trust me, as a reporter covering that White House, I know this, than they were before Election Day. It's sort of like almost now it's safe to trash the Bidens, and you want to say, okay, but where were you a year ago?
Yeah, but you think about it though. George W. Bush, who left with an equally bad approval rating,
28%.
Obviously, it had a very difficult last couple of years of his presidency. He said, I'm out. And went to Crawford, Texas. Jimmy Carter, horribly unpopular as president, went to go build houses. And did not.
Al Gore waited a year. Al Gore waited a year before popping up. He waited all the way till November of the following year, and he won the popular vote in his loss.
Okay, so
you make an excellent point.
Help me with this, though. Every time, though, they come out now, forgive me, but it seems as though it's also an indictment of the legacy media. And those reporters, you can say they were complicit. You can say they didn't care. They looked the other way. They didn't want to attack Joe Biden because
they had a bias. They had a bias, just like what Chris Salissa says here. I mean, and you can try to justify it and say it was an unconscious bias. I don't think it was unconscious at all. I think these people are complete propagandists, but they absolutely had a bias. And when Biden comes out and does an appearance like he did yesterday, it not only looks bad on Biden, it looks bad on you, Chuck Todd, your people, the media.
Legacy media. And those reporters, you can say they were complicit. You can say they didn't care. They looked the other way. They didn't want to attack Joe Biden because they liked Donald Trump less. But I can't imagine this is a good thing for the media's credibility for the American people to see Biden like this.
Oh, I think the fault is not on the media. I think the fault's on the Democratic Party. So I look at it as the Democratic Party.
You guys are the same thing.
That decided.
You guys are the same thing. There's no distinction between the media and the Democratic Party. It was absolutely on you, Chuck Todd. And I don't know who you're trying to convince with this narrative, but it was absolutely on the media. The media let them slide. They let them lie. They covered for them. You're not going to gaslight us. We have too much of the video that we can go and reference right now to show what you guys did. But again, he does the same thing he did here, where he makes the distinction between, oh, that was the pundits and not the journalists. That was the pundits and not the journalists. You're all owned by the same people. The pundits are on the same outlets as the journalists. No one knows the difference. There is no difference. Where's it at?
Oh, I think the fault is not on the media. I think the fault's on the Democratic Party. So I look at it as the Democratic Party is the one that decided not to do anything about this. They're the ones that didn't speak out. I mean, at the end of the day, the press is only as good as its sources. You have bad sources, you're going to have bad coverage. You have good sources, you're going to have good coverage. So I get the it's I think easy in hindsight. And I would say I separate actual reporters from the protector pundit class. There was a whole pundit class.
There was the pundit
that I would say gets conflated with actual reporters.
Well, why did they get conflated? Why did they get conflated, Chuck Todd? Why did the pundits get conflated with the actual reporters? Can you please explain that to me? Because that's the problem. If that's what you're saying, which I'm not buying this for 1 second. But if that's what you're saying, that the real reporters get conflated with the pundits, then why is that happening? Why is that happening, Chuck Todd? Why are the pundits being conflated with the real reporters if that's the problem that you identify?
From the protector pundit class. There was a whole pundit class that I would say gets conflated with actual reporters. They were the protectors, right? There was, and I'm a recovering member of legacy or traditional media, so I'm going to be careful here now that because I'm not going to trash my old employers.
Why not?
What I would say is there were certainly certain individuals who went out of their way to sort of become surrogates for this White House.
Yeah, and what channels were they on? Were they on the channels of your former employer? Were they on the same networks? It's the Sunday shows. What do they do? The Sunday shows, that's Kristen Welker, who's got the job that you had on Meet the Press. They have the same format every week, and all the Sunday shows do. They do 2 interviews in the beginning, and then they bring on the pundits at the end to chop it up and give their opinions on the same, not only on the same network, on the same show. You did that. You would do a couple of interviews in the beginning of Meet the Press, and then you bring the pundits on to chop it up at the end. And yes, the pundits are on the show with the real reporters. And they're conflated because the lines are completely blurred because that's done intentionally. Nobody knows the difference between the real journalists and the pundits. All right, so let's get into this. God, I don't have a lot of time to get into this, but let's listen to some of the questions. Now, most of the tough questions, they have all of the ladies on The View here interviewing Biden, and they usually don't have all of them. It's usually only 5 if Anna's not there one day, then somebody else may not be there. But they brought all 6 of the View ladies out to interview Joe Biden, and pretty much all 5. Sonny asked a little bit of a difficult question, but the token Republican, if you want to call this woman a Republican, Alyssa, she asked some really tough questions, some really interesting questions. She doesn't do very much follow-up. They don't do follow-up, but I guess these are pundits and not journalists. This is ABC. ABC owns The View. ABC Disney. ABC Disney owns ABC News. ABC Disney. So they're under the umbrella of Disney. So, but these are pundits and not journalists.
You had previously said that you thought that you would have won. Since then, Donald Trump won all the battleground states and made inroads with almost every major demographic, from working class voters to Hispanic men to black men. Knowing what you know now, do you think you would have beat him?
Yeah, he still got 7 million fewer votes.
He got 7 million fewer votes.
Number one. Number
Hold
two.
on. I I want to focus on that. The fact that he says that he got 7 million fewer votes. Yes, I think that I would have beat him because he got 7 million fewer votes than I did in 2020. Now, if you don't know, Joe Biden got the most votes in 2020 than any president in American history in 2020. And I kind of related it to like the Lakers winning the NBA championship in 2020. They didn't even play a full season. That's the asterisk year, but 2020 is the asterisk year. You can say what you want about everybody saying it was the safest election and most secure election in American history. If you can believe that, if you want to believe that, you can believe that. But 7 million people is what he says that voted for him in 2020 didn't show up in 2024, and that if he believes that if he was the nominee instead of Kamala Harris, that these 7 million people would have shown up. I just want to give some context to what he's saying.
You know now, do you think you would have beat him?
Yeah, he still got 7 million fewer votes.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people didn't show up.
A lot of people didn't show up. Where are those people? What happened to those 7 million people, Joe? What happened to them? They didn't show up. They showed up in mass for you. Made you the most popular president in American history. Got the most votes in American history in 2020, the asterisk year. And they just didn't show up for your re-election for Kamala Harris? Wow.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. Number two, they're very close in those toss-up states. It was it wasn't a slam dunk.
Look at this guy.
And look, every time I've been on the show, which I've been fortunate to be on more than once. Thanks for having me. Is that we talk? You guys don't focus on as much, and I think it's good on polling numbers. But let me put it this way: he's had the worst 100 days any president's ever had.
Yeah. That's a fact.
According to the polls, and so I'm running out of time, and I want to get to some of this stuff. So this was a interaction with Ana Navarro, because she also works for CNN. Ana Navarro here. Where's she at? Anyway, you know who Ana is. This one. So she works for The View, for ABC, and then she also works for CNN. So she's on CNN later last night, and then she gets into this interaction with Scott Jennings. I want you to listen to this.
Watching him on The View today and watching some of the interviews he did over
your viewership.
Yeah, I saw it. It's rare for me, but I did watch it.
That's what it is.
I will just say, watching him over the last few days reminded me that a whole bunch of people were telling us with a straight face that this man was capable of serving another 4 years as president.
Mm-hmm.
And that these appearances, coupled with what I understand is going to be the equivalent of a nuclear bomb dropped on the Democratic Party when Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book come out next week, I don't know that the Democrats have fully internalized what's about to happen to them. Between what he looks like today and what they're about to report, get ready.
I am not sure that Joe.
You just said that he told.
You said that he told Kamala Harris that she could not have any distance from him.
It's been reported. He told.
It doesn't
her
matter what he
blank.
was.
He told her point blank, no daylight. Kid.
So what they're talking about here? Let me just, because I didn't know if I was going to have time to play this, but I have to play it because in context. So what they're talking about here, what Ana challenges Scott on, is this question that Sonny asks Joe Biden. Take a listen.
And there has been some reporting that you encouraged her for there to be no daylight between the two of you. First, is that true?
She's talking about the Kamala Harris.
There is not.
So she's talking about the Kamala Harris appearance on The View, where she asked Kamala Harris if she would do anything different, and Kamala Harris says, "I can't think of anything."
Here, I asked her if she would have done something differently than your administration over the past 4 years, and because of all the successes that your administration had, I think her response was, "There is not a thing that comes to mind." Now, that answer was weaponized against her And there has been some reporting that you encouraged her for there to be no daylight between the two of you. First, is that true? And do you think in retrospect that she should have tried to differentiate all the wins that your administration had?
Well, look, first of all, I did not advise her to say that.
So he says, no, I did not. And the reporting was that he did advise her to say that there's no daylight. You know, when she became the nominee, don't dog the work that we had done. You know, say everything was great, even though the people were only 30% of the country believed that the country was on the right path. He told her don't depart, or the reporting is that he told her don't depart from what they had done. And so he says, no, that reporting's wrong. I didn't tell her that she needed to be her own person. So that's what Anna is challenging Scott Jennings on here. And then listen to what Anna says. This is hilarious.
You said that he told Kamala Harris that she could not have any distance from him.
It's been reported. He told
it doesn't
her
matter what he
blank.
was.
He told her point blank, no daylight, kid, no daylight.
Because reporting can never be wrong?
Are you attacking the journalism around it?
You think reporting can never be wrong?
Of course the reporting can be wrong. It's always wrong. You guys are clowns.
He told her point blank, no daylight, kid, no daylight.
Because reporting can never be wrong?
Are you attacking the journalism around it?
You think reporting can never be wrong?
If you want to be anti-journalism,
you come on here and you attack reporting every night.
I do not.
We actually asked him the question
There's critical
directly.
reporting about this guy, and he told her point blank, no daylight.
We asked him directly today. Right. Did you tell her that?
You think he's ever told a lie?
I don't think he tells many lies.
I don't think he tells many lies. So Scott Jennings is saying, you're telling me that he couldn't have been lying to you guys? When he said that, no, I didn't tell her that. And she says, I don't think he tells many lies. Lady, what are you talking about? I challenge you. Just go to Google right now and type into Google, Biden falsely claims, and then just see what's prompted and what comes up and how many news articles come up that say Biden falsely claims. He had to drop out of the race in the 1980s when he ran, because he lied about his record. He was caught plagiarizing. And she says no, because that's the media narrative. And watch what she's going to say, that I don't think he lies a lot. You know, he doesn't lie as much as Donald Trump. Listen.
There's critical reporting about this guy, and he told her point blank, no daylight.
We asked him directly today. Right. Did you tell her that?
You think he's ever told a lie?
I don't think he tells many lies.
Cognitive decline, I can tell you that much.
I don't think he tells many lies. I don't think he's done a
Come on.
They start laughing. They all start busting out laughing. And I don't think he tells many lies. He told a lie on the show with you guys, and you guys didn't even challenge him on this lie. I couldn't believe when I heard Joe Biden telling this lie in this appearance yesterday, that he's still telling this lie and that they are allowing him without any pushback to tell this lie. This is another question from Alyssa. Take a listen.
When you announced that you wouldn't be seeking re-election, only 28% of the country thought that the country was on the right track. Now, you are understandably very proud of many achievements in your administration, but do you take any responsibility for not hearing the concerns of voters on the border security or cost of living sooner? And do you take any responsibility for Trump's re-election?
Yes. I do, because, look, I was in charge and he won. So, I take responsibility, number one. But number two, you remember we put together a commission leading with one of the most conservative members of the United States Senate from Oklahoma running it. We came up with a significant means by which we could deal with the border. What did Trump do? He got on the telephone and he called Republicans, do not support it. It's legal, it'll work, it'll make Biden look good, don't do it. And they backed off.
And they're all, you can all hear them in the background. Yeah. So what he's talking about is the bill that Lankford did with Democrats that included $60 billion to Ukraine. That's what he's talking about. This wasn't a border bill. This was a Ukraine bill. It was $60 billion to Ukraine, about $15 billion for the border, and then another $8 billion, I think $8 to $10 billion for Taiwan. That's the bill that he's talking about that Republicans didn't vote for. So this is what they ran on. This was the narrative during the campaign, and they lost on it. And since then, in the first 100 days of the Trump presidency, without any new legislation, border crossings are at a 50-year low without any new legislation. And he's still coming on The View telling this lie that the reason that he couldn't secure the border is because he couldn't get this legislation passed, this Ukraine bill. A complete lie, just complete lie. They don't push back. There's no follow-up on this. I mean, this is why no one trusts the Democratic Party, and this is why no one trusts the media.
And he called Republicans, do not support it. It's legal, it'll work, it'll make Biden look good, don't do it. And they backed off.
Can't someone be impeached for something like that?
That's the only follow-up is from Joy saying, can't someone be impeached for that? For what? Donald Trump wasn't even in office. And there's no evidence that Donald Trump called any senators and told them how to vote on this bill. And the bill was completely unnecessary because Donald Trump, without any new legislation, has brought border crossings down, illegal border crossings down, to a 50-year low. But that's the way the media covers for him. No follow-up, just allows him to lie, allows them to lie, because they have the same agenda. I'll be back on Monday. I have a few more things that I want to cover on this on Monday, and then we'll get into some other stuff next week. Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Monday.